Lila Hart stood frozen in her brother's parlor as Mrs. Edith Crowley placed a single train ticket on the mahogany table, one way to nowhere. "It's for the best, dear," the older woman said, her smile sharp as winter glass. "A barren woman needs purpose, and Mr. Mercer needs a housekeeper." The word hung in the air like a noose. Not wife, not partner, housekeeper. Because in Cedar Ridge, Wyoming, a woman who couldn't bear children wasn't damaged, she was disposable, and they were shipping her west to a man too broken to care. Before we begin Lila's journey into the unforgiving frontier, I invite you to follow this story to the very end. If it moves you, please hit that like button and comment with your city so I can see how far this tale of second chances travels. Now let's step into 1873, where redemption waits in the most unlikely places. The spring mud of Cedar Ridge clung to everything: boots, hems, reputations. Lila Hart had learned that the hard way. She sat in the corner of her brother's drawing room, hands folded in her lap, while the town's most respectable women discussed her future as though she were a piece of furniture to be donated. Mrs. Edith Crowley presided over the gathering like a judge at sentencing, her silver tea service gleaming in the afternoon light. "It's a practical solution," Mrs. Crowley announced, her voice carrying the false warmth of charity. "Mr. Mercer's ranch is quite remote, but respectable. He needs help managing the household, and dear Lila needs—" She paused delicately. "A fresh start." Lila's sister-in-law, Patricia, nodded eagerly. "It's remarkably generous of you to arrange this, Edith. After everything—" She glanced at Lila with something between pity and distaste. "After Dr. Matthews confirmed that Lila's condition is permanent, well, we've all been concerned about her prospects." The words landed like stones. Barren. That's what Dr. Matthews had called her after examining the damage from the fever that had killed her husband Thomas 2 years ago. The same fever that had left her hollowed out, useless in the eyes of a town that measured a woman's worth in cradles filled. "I appreciate your concern," Lila said quietly, "but I haven't agreed to anything." The room fell silent. Mrs. Crowley's teacup paused halfway to her lips. "Lila," her brother James said from the doorway, his voice tight with embarrassment, "perhaps we should discuss this privately." But there would be no discussion. Lila had seen that truth in James's eyes for months now, the way he couldn't quite look at her across the dinner table, the way Patricia had slowly moved her things from the guest room to the small servants' quarters off the kitchen. She was an inconvenience, a reminder of failure, a burden. "Mr. Mercer is expecting a response by week's end," Mrs. Crowley continued, smoothing her skirts. "The arrangement is quite clear: room and board in exchange for household management. It's a business arrangement, nothing more." Her eyes glittered. "Which is appropriate, given the circumstances." Lila stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "May I see this arrangement? In writing?" Mrs. Crowley's smile thinned. She reached into her reticule and produced a folded letter, handing it to Lila with the tips of her fingers, as though even second-hand contact with such a transaction was distasteful. The letter was brief, sparse, written in a careful, masculine hand. Seeking housekeeper for remote ranch property. Room, board, and modest wage provided. Domestic skills required. No other expectations. Correspondence care of Cedar Ridge General Store. C. Mercer. No mention of marriage. No promise of partnership. Just labor in exchange for survival. "He doesn't even want a wife," Lila said softly. "No," Mrs. Crowley agreed. "Which makes you perfectly suited, doesn't it?" The cruelty of it stole Lila's breath. This wasn't charity. It was exile, a way to sweep her out of sight, out of mind, away from the respectable women whose husbands had begun looking at the young widow with too much interest. A barren woman was safe to discard. A beautiful barren woman was dangerous to keep close. "Lila," James said again, and this time there was pleading in his voice. "It's a good opportunity. The ranch is profitable from what I understand. You'd have security. Independence." "Isolation," Lila corrected. "A chance to be useful," Patricia added. "To contribute. Surely that's better than—" She gestured vaguely at Lila's current existence. "Better than what?" Lila wanted to ask. "Better than watching you redecorate the room that was supposed to be my nursery? Better than hearing you whisper to James about how much my presence costs? Better than being the ghost at your dinner table?" She looked down at the letter again. The handwriting was firm, but not unkind. The terms were clear. And beneath the humiliation, beneath the anger, was a tiny seed of something that might have been relief. Because staying here meant slow suffocation. It meant watching James's resentment grow. It meant enduring Patricia's pointed remarks about the cost of extra laundry, extra food, extra space. It meant being invisible and hypervisible all at once, ignored except when her failure needed to be noted. "When does he expect an answer?" Lila asked. Mrs. Crowley's expression shifted to something like triumph. "The westbound train leaves Friday morning. If you're amenable, I'll send word to Mr. Mercer that you'll arrive by week's end." 3 days. 3 days to pack up what remained of her life and board a train to nowhere. "And if I refuse?" Lila asked, though she already knew. James cleared his throat. "Patricia and I have been discussing our own future. We're expecting, Lila, and the house, it's not large enough for—" "I understand," Lila interrupted. She wouldn't make him say it, wouldn't make him admit that his sister was less important than his unborn child, that her grief was less worthy than his wife's condition. She folded the letter carefully and placed it on the tea table. "I'll take the position," Mrs. Crowley exhaled, her satisfaction evident. "Wonderful. I'll make the arrangements. You'll need practical clothing, of course. None of those—" She eyed Lila's black mourning dress with distaste. "Widow's weeds. Mr. Mercer specified that he wants someone capable, not someone dwelling in the past." "Of course," Lila said flatly. "Heaven forbid I remember my dead husband while keeping house for a stranger." "Lila!" James snapped, but Mrs. Crowley laughed, a cold tinkle of sound. "Spirit. Good. You'll need that where you're going. The Mercer Ranch is 30 miles from the nearest town, at the base of the Medicine Bow Range. Beautiful country. Terribly lonely." Lonely. The word settled around Lila's shoulders like a cloak. She was already lonely. At least on a remote ranch, the solitude would be honest. The next 3 days passed in a blur of packing and pointed silences. Patricia went through Lila's belongings with ruthless efficiency, separating what was practical from what was sentimental. The mourning dresses went into a donation box. Thomas's letters were tucked into a small trunk with Lila's wedding ring and the silver locket he'd given her. "You won't need reminders," Patricia said firmly. "Fresh start, remember?" But Lila kept the locket, slipped it into the bottom of her carpet bag when Patricia wasn't looking, wrapped in a handkerchief. Some things weren't up for negotiation. James gave her $50. "For emergencies," he said, pressing the bills into her hand without meeting her eyes. It was generous and insulting all at once. Enough to survive, not enough to come home. On Friday morning, she stood on the train platform with a single trunk and her carpet bag, wearing a simple gray dress that Patricia had deemed appropriate for domestic work. Mrs. Crowley had come to see her off, along with a small cluster of churchwomen who smiled and waved as though they were sending Lila on a delightful adventure rather than permanent exile. "Do right," Mrs. Crowley called as Lila boarded. "Let us know how you're settling in." Lila nodded, but didn't promise. These women didn't want letters. They wanted confirmation that the problem had been solved, the eyesore removed. The train lurched forward, and Cedar Ridge began to slide away. Lila watched from the window as the neat houses and white church steeple faded into distance. She should have felt sad, bereft. Instead, she felt nothing, just a hollow ache where grief had worn her smooth. The journey west took 2 days. The train rattled through rolling prairie, past settlements that grew smaller and farther apart. Other passengers came and went, miners heading to the territories, families seeking homesteads, a trio of school teachers traveling to a new post. Lila kept to herself, reading the same 3 pages of a book she'd brought without absorbing a single word. At night, she lay in her narrow sleeping berth and listened to the wheels clacking against the rails. The rhythm matched her thoughts. Barren, useless, disposable. Barren, useless, disposable. She'd been married to Thomas for 3 years, 3 years of hope and disappointment, of monthly bleeding that arrived like a cruel joke, of whispered consultations with Dr. Matthews that yielded nothing but sympathetic head-shaking. Thomas had been kind about it, patient, but she'd seen the way his eyes dimmed each month, the way he stopped talking about the future. Then the fever came, swept through Cedar Ridge in the winter of 1871, killing 11 people, including Thomas. Lila survived, but the fever had burned through her like wildfire, leaving damage Dr. Matthews could catalog but not repair. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Hart," he'd said 6 months after Thomas's death, after she'd finally gathered the courage to ask if there was any hope. "The scarring is extensive. Pregnancy would be impossible, even dangerous." The town had absorbed that information with unseemly speed. By the time Lila emerged from mourning, her status had already been decided. Widow, barren, pitiable, available for reassignment. The train pulled into Rawlins on Saturday afternoon. Lila stepped onto the platform with her trunk and carpet bag, blinking in the bright sunlight. The town was small but bustling, a way station for miners and ranchers, with a single main street of wood-frame buildings and a scatter of tents at the outskirts. A man waited near the station house, holding a handwritten sign, Hart. He was tall and weathered, somewhere past 50, with gray threading through his dark hair and lines carved deep around his eyes. He wore working clothes, canvas trousers, a faded blue shirt, a battered hat. When he saw Lila approaching, his expression didn't change. No welcome, no curiosity, just tired assessment. "Mrs. Hart?" he asked. "Yes." "I'm Ben Tucker, work for Cole Mercer. He sent me to fetch you." He reached for her trunk. "Wagon's this way." Lila followed him through the dusty street to a buckboard wagon hitched to 2 sturdy horses. Ben loaded her trunk with practiced efficiency, then helped her onto the seat with impersonal courtesy. "It's about 4 hours to the ranch," he said, climbing up beside her. "Road's rough in places. We'll stop halfway to rest the horses." "Thank you." He nodded and clicked to the team. The wagon lurched forward, leaving Rawlins behind. The landscape opened up around them. Vast rolling grasslands studded with sage, the Medicine Bow Mountains rising in the distance like a wall of stone and snow. The sky was enormous, achingly blue, empty of everything but wind and light. Lila had never seen so much space. It made her feel small and inconsequential, which was somehow comforting. "What's Mr. Mercer like?" she asked after an hour of silence. Ben considered the question, his eyes on the road. "Fair, works hard, keeps to himself." "Is he?" Lila hesitated. "Is he difficult?" "Depends on what you mean by difficult." Ben glanced at her. "He don't talk much. Don't suffer fools, don't care for pretense. If you do your work and mind your business, you'll get along fine." It wasn't reassuring. "And if I don't?" "Then you'll be on the next train east." Ben's tone was matter-of-fact. "Cole don't waste time on people who don't pull their weight. Ranch is too demanding for passengers." Lila absorbed that. "What happened to the last housekeeper?" "Never had one. Cole's been managing on his own since his wife died. 6 years now." 6 years. Lila turned that over in her mind. Why does he need one now? Ben was quiet for so long that Lila thought he wouldn't answer. Then he said, "Ranch is growing. More hands to feed. More work than one man can handle alone. Plus," he stopped. "Plus what?" "Cole's wearing out. Won't admit it, but I see it. Man can't do everything forever." Ben looked at her directly. "He needs help, real help, not some town lady who thinks ranch work is romantic. You understand?" "I understand," Lila said quietly. "I'm not here for romance, Mr. Tucker. I'm here to work." Something shifted in Ben's expression. Not quite approval, but close. "Good. Keep that in mind when you meet him. Cole's got no patience for expectations." They stopped at a small creek to water the horses. Lila stretched her legs, walking along the bank while Ben tended to the team. The water was clear and cold, rushing over smooth stones. In the distance, an elk grazed in the tall grass, its antlers catching the afternoon light. "Pretty, ain't it?" Ben said, coming to stand beside her. "Yes," Lila admitted. "Lonely, though." "Can be. Depends on what you're looking for." He pulled out a canteen and offered it to her. "Some folks come out here running from something. Others come looking for something. Either way, the land don't care. It just is." Lila drank, the water biting cold against her throat. What if you're both, running and looking? Ben smiled, the first real warmth she'd seen from him. Then you're in the right place, Mrs. Hart. They reached the ranch as the sun was sliding behind the mountains. Lila's first glimpse of the Mercer property took her breath away. The house sat in a wide valley, backed by foothills that rose toward snow-capped peaks. A creek wound through the property, lined with cottonwoods just beginning to leaf out. The house itself was low and sturdy, built from rough-cut timber and river stone, with a wide porch facing east. Outbuildings scattered around it. A barn, a bunkhouse, corrals, a smokehouse. Cattle dotted the far pastures, dark shapes against the greening grass. It was beautiful, isolated, utterly remote. The front door opened as Ben pulled the wagon up to the house. A man stepped out onto the porch, and Lila's stomach tightened. Cole Mercer was nothing like she'd imagined. He was younger than she'd expected, perhaps 35, tall and lean, with the kind of hard-muscled build that came from years of physical labor. Dark hair, dark eyes, a face that might have been handsome if it weren't so closed. He wore work clothes like Ben's, the sleeves of his shirt rolled to his elbows, dust and sweat staining the fabric. He looked at Lila with absolutely no expression, no welcome, no hostility, nothing. "Mrs. Hart," he said. His voice was low, rough-edged. "Mr. Mercer." Lila climbed down from the wagon before Ben could help her, keeping her chin up. Cole's eyes tracked the movement, but he didn't comment. "Ben, get her trunk inside. Mrs. Hart, I'll show you the house." It wasn't an invitation, it was an instruction. Lila followed him onto the porch and through the front door. The interior was dim after the bright sunlight, a large main room with a stone fireplace, rough furniture that looked handmade, windows facing east and south. A doorway led to what appeared to be a kitchen. Stairs climbed to a second floor. "Kitchen's through there," Cole said, gesturing. "Pantry's stocked. Well's out back. 2 bedrooms upstairs. You'll take the one on the left. Mine's on the right. All right? Meals are at 6, noon, and 6. I take coffee at 5. He turned to face her directly. "I've got 4 ranch hands living in the bunkhouse. They eat breakfast and dinner here. You'll cook for 6, including yourself. Laundry on Mondays, baking twice a week. General cleaning as needed." Lila nodded, cataloging the requirements. It was manageable. More than manageable. It was less work than she'd done at James's house. "I'm gone most days," Cole continued. "Working the herd, mending fence, managing the property. I don't keep regular hours. Don't expect conversation at meals. Don't expect—" He paused, something flickering in his eyes. "Anything beyond the terms we agreed on." "I don't," Lila said quietly. "I'm here to work, Mr. Mercer. Nothing more." He studied her for a long moment. Lila met his gaze steadily, refusing to look away. Whatever he saw seemed to satisfy him, because he nodded once. "Wages are $5 a month, plus room and board. Paid first of every month. Any questions?" "No." "Good." He moved toward the door, then stopped. "One more thing. This is a working ranch. It's not safe to wander without telling someone where you're going. Stay close to the house unless you're with me or Ben." "I understand." He left without another word. Lila stood in the empty room, listening to his boots cross the porch and fade into distance. Through the window, she watched him stride toward the barn, his movements efficient and purposeful. Ben came in with her trunk, setting it down gently. "I'll bring this up to your room." "Thank you, Mr. Tucker." "Ben," he corrected. "We don't stand on ceremony out here, Mrs. Hart." "Then you should call me Lila." He smiled. "I'll show you the kitchen before I head out. Cole keeps things organized, but you'll want to know where everything is before you start cooking." The kitchen was larger than Lila expected. A big cast-iron stove, a sturdy work table, open shelves lined with dishes and cookware. The pantry was well stocked. Flour, cornmeal, coffee, beans, dried beef, canned tomatoes, peaches, preserves. Someone had been planning for her arrival. "Cole laid in supplies last week," Ben explained. "He's practical about most things. Knows what needs doing and does it." "He doesn't seem very welcoming," Lila ventured. "He's not welcoming. He's careful." Ben leaned against the doorframe. "Cole's been alone a long time, Lila. His wife Sarah died hard. Fever took her slow. They were building something here together, and then she was gone. He's not interested in replacing her, just needs help keeping the ranch running. Lila felt a pang of unexpected kinship. I'm not looking to replace anyone either. My husband, Thomas, he died 2 years ago. I understand loss. Ben's expression softened. Then you understand why Cole keeps his distance. It's not personal, it's survival. After Ben left, Lila carried her trunk upstairs. The bedroom was small but clean, a narrow bed with a simple quilt, a washstand, a chest of drawers, a single window facing the mountains. Sparse, functional. Hers. She unpacked slowly, putting her few dresses in the chest, arranging her brush and mirror on the washstand. At the bottom of her carpet bag, she found the locket, held it in her palm, feeling its weight. Thomas smiled up at her from the small oval photograph inside, young, hopeful, alive. I'm sorry, she whispered. Sorry for surviving, sorry for moving on, sorry for being here. She closed the locket and tucked it into the top drawer, then went downstairs to start dinner. Cooking for 6 was second nature. She'd done it at James's house for months before Patricia decided she was too expensive to keep. Lila fell into the rhythm easily, building a fire in the stove, measuring flour for biscuits, putting beans on to simmer with salt pork and onions. The work was familiar, comforting. The ranch hands came in at 6 exactly, 4 men ranging from young to grizzled, all of them dusty and tired. They introduced themselves politely. Jack, Sam, Pete, Shayapo, P, and a kid named Charlie who couldn't be more than 17, washed at the pump outside and sat down at the long table without ceremony. Cole came in last, taking the chair at the head of the table. He said grace, brief and formal, then passed the biscuits without comment. Dinner was silent except for the scrape of forks and the occasional request to pass something. The men ate like they were starving, seconds and thirds, biscuits disappearing faster than Lila could refill the basket. When they finished, they thanked her quietly and filed out, leaving their dishes stacked by the wash basin. Cole was the last to leave. He stood, pushed his chair in, and looked at Lila with that same unreadable expression. Biscuits were good, he said. It was the first compliment she'd received in months. Lila felt something loosen in her chest. Thank you. He nodded and left. Lila washed the dishes in water heated on the stove, dried them, put everything away. Then she climbed the stairs to her small room and lay down on the narrow bed, fully dressed. Through the window, stars were emerging, more stars than she'd ever seen, a thick river of light across the black sky. The silence was immense. No neighbors, no traffic, no whispered judgments, just wind and distance and the vast indifferent beauty of the frontier. Lila closed her eyes, and for the first time in 2 years, slept without dreaming. CHÍNH. The days found their rhythm quickly. Lila rose at 4:30, started the stove, put coffee on. Cole appeared at 5 exactly, drank 2 cups in silence while she made breakfast, flapjacks, bacon, eggs, more biscuits. The ranch hands arrived at 6. Everyone ate, said little, disappeared into the work of the day. Lila cleaned the kitchen, swept the floors, started laundry. The washboard and tub were out back, the clothesline strung between 2 posts. She scrubbed shirts and trousers in water she heated herself, her hands going red and raw in the cold. Hung everything to dry in the wind while the mountains watched. Afternoons were for baking, mending, preserving. Lila discovered a small garden plot behind the house, neglected but still alive, with early lettuce and radishes pushing through the soil. She weeded it carefully, coaxing life from the earth. Evenings brought dinner, more silence, more dishes. Then the climb to her room, the slow fade of light, the stars. Cole kept his distance. He was polite but remote, speaking only when necessary. He rose before dawn and returned after dark, his hands rough with work, his face closed. Sometimes Lila caught him watching her, not with interest, but with wariness, as though waiting for her to reveal herself as another disappointment. She didn't push, didn't try to make conversation, just did her work and stayed out of his way. Ben was friendlier. He stopped by the kitchen most mornings for an extra cup of coffee, asking how she was settling in. Lila appreciated the small kindnesses, the way he showed her where the root cellar was, how to manage the temperamental stove, which chickens were the best layers. "You're doing good," he told her after the first week. Cole's particular about his household. If he's not complaining, you're doing fine. He doesn't say much of anything, Lila observed. That's Cole. Words are work for him. He only spends them when he has to. Lila understood that. Good. After Cedar Ridge, after the constant chatter of women who used words like weapons, silence was a relief. 2 weeks in, the first real test came. Lila was in the garden when she heard shouting from the barn. She straightened, shading her eyes against the sun. Cole stood in the corral, working with a young horse, a leggy bay mare that clearly wanted nothing to do with being broken. The mare reared, hooves flashing. Cole held the lead rope firm, talking low and steady. The horse came down hard, then bucked, twisting. The rope burned through Cole's hands. He held on, but Lila saw the moment his grip faltered. The mare bolted, jerking Cole off his feet. He hit the ground hard, the rope whipping free. The horse charged toward the open gate. Lila didn't think. She ran. She reached the gate just as the mare barreled through, swinging it shut with all her weight. The horse skidded, turned, eyes rolling white. Lila stood her ground, arms spread, making herself big. "Easy," she said, her voice shaking. "Easy now." The mare snorted, dancing sideways. For a terrible moment, Lila thought the horse would charge. Then Cole was there, limping but upright, moving slow and careful. He took the lead rope that trailed on the ground, murmuring something too quiet for Lila to hear. The mare's ears flicked forward. She blew out a long breath and stood still. Cole led her back into the corral, his movements careful. Lila closed the gate behind them, her heart hammering. When Cole emerged a few minutes later, his hands were bleeding and there was dirt smeared across his cheek. He looked at Lila with something that might have been surprise. "You could have been hurt," he said. "So could you." He studied her, then nodded once. "Thank you." It was the most he'd said to her since she arrived. That night at dinner, the ranch hands were talking about the mare, how Cole had been working with her for weeks, how stubborn she was. "Saw Mrs. Hart close that gate like she was facing down a grizzly," Jack said, grinning. "Horse about ran her over." "Didn't run her over, though," Sam added. "That takes guts." Lila felt her face heat. "I just reacted." "Good reaction," Pete said. "Most folks freeze up." Cole said nothing, but when Lila passed him the beans, their eyes met for a moment. Something passed between them. Acknowledgement, maybe. Respect. It was a small thing, but it felt like a door opening. 3 weeks became 4. 4 became 6. Spring deepened into early summer, the grass turning thick and green, wildflowers carpeting the meadows. Lila's hands toughened. Her arms grew strong from hauling water, kneading bread, scrubbing laundry. The ranch became familiar. Every creak of the floorboards, every quirk of the stove, the way the wind sounded different depending on which direction it came from. She learned the rhythms of Cole's work, the way he checked the fences every Monday, rode out to the far pastures on Wednesdays, worked with the horses on Fridays. She packed him lunches without being asked, sandwiches wrapped in cloth, apples, canteens of cold coffee. He took them without comment, but they were always empty when he returned. She learned the ranch hands, too. Jack was the joker, always ready with a story. Sam was quiet but observant, the one who noticed when supplies were running low. Pete had worked for Cole since the beginning, loyal as a hound. Charlie was homesick for his mother's cooking and pathetically grateful for anything Lila made. "Best pies I ever had," he told her earnestly after she made dried apple pie. "Better than Ma's, even." "Don't let your mother hear you say that," Lila said, smiling. It was the first time she'd smiled in months. It felt strange. Good. She wrote one letter to James, brief and dutiful. "The ranch is remote but well managed. Mr. Mercer is a fair employer. I'm well." She didn't mention the silence or the stars or the way her shoulders had stopped aching from tension. Didn't mention that she slept through the night now, dreamless and deep. James didn't write back. In early June, Ben brought news from town. "Storm's coming," he said, unloading supplies. "Big one. They're saying it could drop 2 feet of snow in the high country." "In June?" Lila asked, startled. "Mountain weather." Ben shrugged. "It happens. Cole's bringing the herd down closer to the ranch, just in case. We'll be battening down for a few days." That evening, Cole came in earlier than usual. There's a storm coming, he told Lila. Could last 3-4 days. Make sure we've got enough provisions. Wood stocked. Extra blankets ready. How bad will it be? Bad enough. He met her eyes. If it hits like they're predicting, we might have travelers trying to reach shelter. Be prepared to feed extra mouths. I will. The storm rolled in the next afternoon. Lila watched it come from the kitchen window, a wall of dark cloud building over the mountains, lightning flickering in its heart. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in an hour. Wind rattled the windows, howling around the eaves. Then the snow began. It came down thick and fast, erasing the world. Within an hour, Lila couldn't see the barn. Within 2 hours, drifts were building against the house. Cole and the ranch hands secured the livestock, covered equipment, brought extra firewood onto the porch. By nightfall, they were locked in. Dinner that night was tense. Everyone knew what a June blizzard could mean. Travelers caught unprepared, cattle scattered, damage to the buildings. They ate quickly, and the men disappeared to the bunkhouse, leaving Lila and Cole alone. Cole stood at the window, watching the storm. Going to be a long night, he said. Should I keep the stove hot? In case someone needs shelter? He glanced at her. Good thinking. Make extra coffee, too. Might need it. Lila did. She baked bread, put a pot of stew on to simmer, kept the fire roaring. Cole sat at the table, oiling tack and checking supplies, his presence steady and calm. Around midnight, they heard it, a pounding on the door. Cole was on his feet instantly, rifle in hand. Stay back, he told Lila. He opened the door. 2 figures stumbled in on a blast of wind and snow, a man and a woman, both frozen and desperate. Please, the man gasped. We're lost. Our wagon's stuck half a mile back. We saw your light. Get inside, Cole said, pulling them through the door. Lila, blankets, hot coffee. Lila moved fast, grabbing quilts from the chest, pouring coffee with shaking hands. The travelers were young, maybe mid-20s, dressed in city clothes, completely inadequate for the storm. The woman was shaking so hard she could barely hold the cup Lila pressed into her hands. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you. Cole was already pulling on his coat. Ben, he shouted toward the bunkhouse. Jack, we've got people in trouble. Within minutes, the men were geared up and heading into the storm. Lila stayed with the woman, wrapping her in blankets, making her drink the hot coffee. My husband, the woman said through chattering teeth. He went with them. They'll bring him back, Lila assured her. Cole knows this land. He won't lose anyone. She prayed she was right. An hour later, they returned. Cole, Ben, Jack, and the young husband, along with 2 more travelers they'd found trying to shelter under the stuck wagon. All of them were half frozen, covered in snow. Lila worked fast. Hot coffee, dry clothes, bowls of stew. She moved through the chaos with calm efficiency, getting everyone settled, tending frostbitten fingers, stoking the fire higher. Cole watched her work with something like approval in his eyes. By 2 in the morning, the travelers were asleep. The couple on the sofa, the other 2 wrapped in blankets by the fire. The ranch hands had returned to the bunkhouse. Lila and Cole were alone in the kitchen. You did good tonight, Cole said quietly. Lila looked up from the dishes she was washing. So did you. You could have left them. No, he said. I couldn't. There was something in his voice, an old pain, carefully controlled. Lila remembered what Ben had told her about Sarah, about the fever that had taken her slow. Your wife? She said softly. She died in a storm like this? Cole's jaw tightened. No, she died in spring, but I know what it's like to be helpless, to watch someone slip away and not be able to stop it. He looked at Lila directly. I won't leave people to die if I can help it. Neither will I, Lila said. They stood there in the quiet kitchen, the storm howling outside, and something shifted between them. Not friendship, not yet, but understanding, recognition. They were both survivors, both damaged, both trying to build something from the wreckage. Get some sleep, Cole said finally. I'll keep watch in case anyone else shows up. I can help. Sleep, Lila. It was the first time he'd used her name. You've done enough. Lila climbed the stairs to her room but didn't undress. She lay on top of the quilt, listening to the storm, to Cole moving around downstairs, to the sound of strangers breathing in a house that was slowly becoming home. And she realized something that made her throat tight. She wasn't useless anymore. She had purpose. Not because someone had assigned it to her, but because she'd claimed it. The storm raged for 3 days. By the time it cleared, they'd sheltered 6 travelers total. The couple, 2 miners, a circuit preacher, and a woman traveling alone to meet her sister in Rollins. Lila cooked, cleaned, tended, and listened to their stories. When the snow finally stopped and the travelers prepared to leave, they thanked Lila and Cole with the kind of gratitude that comes from genuine rescue. "You saved our lives," the young wife said, gripping Lila's hands. "We won't forget this." After they'd gone, Cole stood on the porch, surveying the damage. Drifts covered the fences, branches littered the yard, but the house stood solid, and everyone had survived. "We make a good team," he said. Lila stood beside him, looking out at the white world. "Yes," she agreed, "we do." It wasn't love. It wasn't even friendship yet. But it was the beginning of something neither of them had expected, something that might, in time, become trust. The weeks after the storm brought a subtle shift in the atmosphere of the ranch, like ice breaking up on a frozen river. Cole still kept his distance, still spoke in short sentences when he spoke at all, but there was something different in the way he moved through the house now. He no longer flinched when Lila entered a room. He poured his own coffee some mornings and left hers sitting on the table, still steaming. Small gestures that cost him nothing but meant everything. Lila noticed. She didn't comment. Some things were better left unspoken. Summer settled over the valley with the slow inevitability of seasons turning. The days stretched long and golden. The grass grew tall enough to hide the cattle's legs, and the garden Lila had coaxed back to life exploded with lettuce, radishes, peas climbing their stakes. She spent her mornings bent over the rows, dirt under her fingernails, sun warm on her back. It was honest work, the kind that left her tired but not empty. She was picking beans one afternoon when she heard hoofbeats approaching fast. Too fast. Lila straightened, shading her eyes. A rider was coming hard from the east, dust rising behind him like smoke. Cole emerged from the barn, Ben right behind him. They stood watching as the rider pulled up, his horse lathered and blowing. "Mercer," the man gasped. He was young, maybe 20, with wild eyes and dust thick on his face. "You got trouble coming." Cole's expression didn't change, but his shoulders went rigid. "What kind of trouble?" "Drifter's been asking questions in Rollins about your property, about who lives here." The rider swung down from his horse, breathing hard. "Description matches a fellow who's wanted in Montana for claim jumping. Name's Cutter, Ray Cutter. He's got 2 men with him, and they've been watching the road to your place for 3 days." Ben swore softly. Cole was silent for a long moment, his jaw working. Then he said, "You ride for Sheriff Morrison?" "No, sir. I work at the feed store. But I heard the talk and figured you'd want to know. Morrison's out of town, won't be back till Monday." "What's today?" "Thursday." Cole looked at Ben. Something passed between them, some shared knowledge Lila couldn't read. Then Cole reached into his pocket and pulled out a silver dollar, pressing it into the young man's hand. "You didn't ride out here. You were never here. Understand?" The rider nodded, pocketed the coin, and swung back onto his horse. He was gone as fast as he'd come, hoofbeats fading into the distance. Lila walked over slowly, her hands still full of beans. "What's claim jumping?" Cole turned to her. His face was carefully neutral, but she could see the tension in the set of his shoulders, the way his hand rested near the gun on his hip. "It's when men try to take property that doesn't belong to them. Sometimes legally, through false paperwork. Sometimes not. And this Cutter, he's done this before?" "3 times that I know of," Ben said grimly. "Montana, Idaho, Colorado, finds isolated ranches, looks for weaknesses. If he can't buy you out cheap, he finds other ways to persuade you." "What kind of ways?" Lila asked, though she already knew the answer. "The kind that leave people hurt," Cole said flatly. "Or worse." Lila felt ice slide down her spine. "What are you going to do?" "What I have to." Cole looked toward the mountains, calculating. "Ben, gather the men. I want everyone armed and on rotation through the night. 2-hour watches. Nobody goes anywhere alone." "What about me?" Lila asked. Cole looked at her then, really looked at her. You stay in the house. Keep away from the windows after dark. If anything happens, if you hear gunfire, if you see anything strange, you get upstairs and you stay there. Don't come down until I tell you it's safe. I can help. Lila. His voice was sharp. This isn't a discussion. These men are dangerous. I need to know you're safe so I can focus on protecting the ranch. She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him she wasn't some fragile thing to be locked away. But the look in his eyes stopped her. This wasn't about thinking her weak. It was about having one less thing to worry about when trouble came. All right, she said quietly. I'll stay inside. The tension in his jaw eased slightly. Thank you. That night, dinner was quiet. The ranch hands knew something was wrong. They'd seen Ben and Cole talking in low voices, seen the rifles being checked and loaded. Nobody asked questions, but the usual easy banter was gone, replaced by watchful silence. After the men left, Cole lingered in the kitchen while Lila washed dishes. He stood by the window, looking out into the gathering dark. When my wife died, he said suddenly, I thought about leaving. Selling the ranch, going somewhere else, starting over where nothing reminded me of her. Lila's hand stilled in the wash water. Cole had never volunteered information about Sarah before. She stayed quiet, letting him find his words. But I couldn't do it, he continued. She loved this place. We built it together. Every fence post, every wall. Leaving felt like erasing her. He turned to look at Lila. I won't let someone take it. I can't. You won't have to, Lila said. We'll protect it. We? You think I'm just going to hide upstairs while men threaten everything you've built? Lila dried her hands on her apron. I know you want me out of the way, Cole. And I'll stay inside like you asked. But don't think I'm helpless. I know how to use a rifle. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe, or respect. Your husband teach you? My father. He believed women should know how to protect themselves. She met his gaze steadily. If it comes to it, I can shoot. And I will. Cole was quiet for a long moment, then he nodded. There's a Winchester in my bedroom. I'll show you where I keep the ammunition. They went upstairs together. Cole's room was as spare as Lila's, a wide bed covered with a faded quilt, a dresser, a washstand. But above the bed hung a photograph in a simple frame, a young woman with dark hair and a gentle smile, wearing a white dress. Sarah. Cole saw Lila looking and didn't turn away. She was 22 when we married, 28 when she died, 6 years. It doesn't seem like enough time. It never is, Lila said softly. Thomas and I had 3 years. I used to think that if I'd just had more time, I could have made him happy. Could have given him what he wanted. Children? Yes. The word hurt to say. Always would. The fever took that from me, along with everything else. Cole was quiet for a moment, then said, Sarah couldn't have children either. Some kind of problem from birth. We knew before we married. He opened the dresser drawer, showing Lila where the ammunition was stored. The town ladies had opinions about it, about why I'd marry a barren woman. Like love was only worth something if it produced heirs. Lila's throat tightened. What did you tell them? Nothing. Sarah and I knew what we had. We didn't need their approval. He handed Lila a box of cartridges. You load it like this. He showed her the Winchester's mechanism, patient and thorough. His hands were steady, calloused from years of work. When he was satisfied she could handle the rifle safely, he stepped back. Keep it in your room, he said. Loaded, but not cocked. If you hear trouble, don't hesitate. I won't. They stood there in the dim room, Sarah's photograph watching from the wall. Lila felt the weight of shared grief between them, heavy and honest. Thank you for trusting me, she said. Cole's expression softened almost imperceptibly. You've earned it. The next day passed in tense normalcy. Lila cooked, cleaned, tended the garden. The men worked the ranch in pairs, always armed, always watching the horizon. Ben rode the perimeter 3 times, checking for signs of intruders. Nothing. Friday came. Still nothing. Maybe he moved on, Jack said hopefully over dinner. Maybe he heard Mercer's not an easy target. Maybe, Cole said. But he didn't sound convinced. Saturday morning,
Lila woke to find Cole already gone. She made coffee, started breakfast, tried to ignore the knot of anxiety in her stomach. The house felt too quiet, too still. She was rolling out biscuit dough when she heard it, the distant sound of cattle lowing in distress, not the usual noise. Something panicked. Lila wiped her hands and went to the window. In the east pasture, she could see the herd milling in confusion, dust rising, and then she saw them. 3 riders moving through the cattle, driving them toward the fence line. Her heart kicked hard. She ran to the door, shouting for Ben. He came at a run from the barn, took one look at the pasture, and cursed viciously. "They're scattering the herd. Where's Cole?" "I don't know. He was gone when I woke up. He rode out to check the north fence." Ben was already moving, shouting for the other men. "Jack, Sam, with me. Pete, stay with Mrs. Hart." "I can help," Lila started, but Ben cut her off. "Stay in the house. Lock the doors. If anyone comes near who isn't us, you know what to do." Then they were gone, riding hard toward the chaos. Lila watched from the window, her hands clenched. The riders in the pasture saw Ben and the others coming and wheeled their horses, driving harder. Cattle broke through the fence with the sound of splintering wood, scattering into the sage. Pete stood on the porch, rifle ready, his young face pale but determined. "Mrs. Hart, you should get inside." Lila didn't argue. She went back to the kitchen, but instead of hiding, she pulled the Winchester from upstairs and checked the load. Then she positioned herself where she could see both the front door and the window, and she waited. The sounds of shouting drifted from the pasture. Gunfire cracked once, twice. Lila's hands tightened on the rifle. Minutes stretched like hours. Then she heard hoofbeats approaching the house, fast and getting faster. Lila moved to the window, staying back from the glass. A single rider was coming straight for the house, his horse at a dead run. Not Ben, not any of the ranch hands. A stranger, lean and hard-faced, with a gun drawn. The rider pulled up in front of the porch. Pete stepped forward, rifle raised. "That's far enough," Pete called. "Turn around and ride out." The stranger smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. "I got business with Mercer." "Mr. Mercer ain't here." "Then I'll wait." The stranger dismounted slowly, his gun never wavering. "You gonna shoot me, boy? 'Cause if you are, you better do it now. Otherwise, put that rifle down and step aside." Pete's hands were shaking. Lila could see it from where she stood. He was brave, but he was 17 years old and facing a killer. She made her decision. Lila opened the door and stepped onto the porch, the Winchester raised to her shoulder. "He's not alone," she said clearly, "and I don't shake." The stranger's eyes flicked to her, reassessing. For a long moment, nobody moved. The air felt brittle, ready to shatter. Then Cole's voice cut through the tension like a knife. "Cutter!" The stranger turned. Cole sat on his horse 30 yards away, rifle already aimed. Ben and Jack flanked him, similarly armed. They'd circled back while Cutter was focused on the house. Cutter's smile widened, but his eyes were cold. "Mercer, heard you had yourself a nice piece of land here. Productive, profitable. It's not for sale." "Everything's for sale. Just a matter of price." Cutter's gun was still pointed at Pete. "I'm a reasonable man. I'll give you a fair offer. $500 for the whole spread. The land's worth 20 times that, and it's not for sale at any price." "See, that's where you're wrong." Cutter's voice hardened. "Because I can make things very uncomfortable for you, Mercer. Scattered cattle, broken fences, accidents in the night. Or worse." His eyes flicked to Lila. "You got yourself a pretty housekeeper. Be a shame if something happened to her." The temperature dropped 20 degrees. Cole's rifle didn't waver, but Lila saw his fingers shift on the trigger. "You threatening my people, Cutter?" "Just stating facts." Cutter shrugged. "You're a long way from town. Sheriff's jurisdiction is murky out here. Things happen. Nobody asks too many questions." "You're right," Cole said quietly. "We're a long way from town, which means nobody's going to ask questions when I put a bullet through you for trespassing." Cutter laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You'd shoot an unarmed man?" "You're armed, and you're on my property making threats. That's all the justification I need." The standoff stretched. Lila's arms ached from holding the rifle steady, but she didn't lower it. Pete stood frozen beside her. In the distance, the scattered cattle were still lowing. Finally, Cutter holstered his gun with exaggerated slowness. All right, Mercer, you win this round, but I'll be back. And next time, you might not see me coming. Next time, I'll shoot first. Cole's voice was flat. Now get off my land. Cutter mounted his horse, taking his time. As he turned to leave, he looked at Lila one more time. Pretty thing, he said softly. Real pretty. Then he spurred his horse and rode east, not hurrying, making it clear he wasn't afraid. Nobody moved until he disappeared over the ridge. Then Cole dismounted and crossed the yard in 3 long strides, climbing the porch steps. Are you all right? He asked Lila. I'm fine. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Pete? Yes, ma'am. Pete lowered his rifle, his hand still shaking. Thought he was going to shoot me for sure. You did good, kid, Jack said, riding up. Stood your ground. Cole took the Winchester from Lila's hands gently. I told you to stay inside. I was inside. Then he threatened Pete. Lila met his eyes. I told you I could shoot if I had to. Something passed over Cole's face. Anger, fear, respect, all mixed together. Don't do it again. Don't leave me with a choice. They stared at each other for a long moment. Then Cole's mouth twitched. It wasn't quite a smile, but it was close. Stubborn, he muttered. Practical, Lila corrected. Ben cleared his throat. Hate to interrupt, but we got about 50 heads scattered to hell and back. It's going to take us all day to round them up. Cole nodded, his attention shifting back to the immediate problem. Sam, you and Jack start on the east side. Pete, help them. Ben, check the fence. I want to know how many sections need repair. What about you? Ben asked. I'm riding to Rollins. Morrison needs to know Cutter's operating in his territory. Sheriff won't be back till Monday, Lila reminded him. Then I'll file a report and make sure everyone in town knows what happened. Cutter operates on intimidation. Hard to intimidate when the whole county's watching. Cole looked at Lila. I'll be back before dark. Keep the rifle close. I will. He mounted his horse, then paused. Lila, thank you for backing Pete, for... He stopped, struggling with the words. For standing with us. Where else would I stand? Lila asked simply. Cole nodded once, then rode out. The men scattered to their tasks, leaving Lila alone on the porch. She went inside, her legs suddenly weak. The adrenaline was fading, leaving her shaky and cold. She sat at the kitchen table, her hands trembling, and made herself breathe slowly. She'd just faced down a killer. She'd stood on the porch with a loaded rifle and threatened to shoot a man. And she would have done it. Would have pulled the trigger if Cutter had moved wrong. The realization should have horrified her. Instead, she felt a strange sense of rightness. This was her home now. These were her people. She would protect them. When Cole returned that evening, his face was grim. Sheriff's deputy took my statement, said Morrison would look into it when he gets back. Wasn't much interested otherwise. What does that mean? Lila asked, serving dinner. Means we're on our own. Cole sat down heavily. Morrison's a good man, but he's got a whole county to cover. Unless Cutter kills someone, there's not much he can do about threats and scattered cattle. So Cutter just gets away with it? For now. Cole's jaw was tight. But I put the word out. Every rancher within 50 miles knows to watch for him, and I sent a telegram to the Montana Marshal. If Cutter's wanted up there, maybe they'll send someone. It wasn't enough. Lila could see it in Cole's face, in the tension that didn't leave his shoulders even after the men had eaten and gone to bed. He sat at the table long after she'd finished the dishes, cleaning his rifle with methodical precision. You should rest, Lila said quietly. Can't. Not yet. He loaded the rifle, checked the action. I keep thinking about what he said. About you. About... He stopped, his hand stilling. I brought you here to keep house, Lila, not to put you in danger. You didn't put me in danger, Cutter did. If you weren't here, you wouldn't be a target. If I weren't here, Pete might be dead. Lila sat down across from him. Cole, I'm not leaving. Not because of threats, not because of anything. This is my home now, too. He looked at her, his dark eyes unreadable. You don't owe me loyalty. This isn't about owing, it's about choosing. Lila folded her hands on the table. I choose to be here. I choose to stand with you. Not because I have to. Because I want to. Cole was silent for a long time. Then he said, Sarah used to say the same thing. When times got hard, when I tried to send her to town for safety, she'd dig in her heels. Said a partnership meant standing together, not running separate ways. She was right. She was stubborn. So am I. Lila smiled slightly. You should probably get used to it. This time, Cole did smile. Small and brief, but real. I'm starting to. The next week passed without incident, but the tension didn't ease. The men worked in shifts, always armed, always watching. Lila kept the Winchester in the kitchen during the day, close enough to reach. At night, she slept with it propped against the wall beside her bed. Cole doubled the watches, riding the property himself every morning before dawn. He came back exhausted, his face drawn, but he never complained, just drank his coffee, ate whatever Lila put in front of him, and went back out. On the 8th day, Ben found the fence cut in 3 places. On the 10th, someone shot at Sam from the tree line, missing by inches. On the 12th, the barn caught fire. They saw the smoke from the house, thick and black, rising against the evening sky. Cole and the men ran for the barn while Lila worked the pump, filling buckets, passing them in a chain. The flames were fierce, fed by dry hay, but they fought it together. Bucket after bucket, arms aching, lungs burning from smoke. They saved most of the structure. Lost some feed, some tack. Could have been worse. Standing in the smoldering wreckage afterward, Cole's face was carved from stone. This ends now, he said. How? Ben asked. His face was black with soot, his hands blistered. We can't guard every inch of the ranch every hour. No, but we can make Cutter think we can. Cole looked at each of his men in turn. We're going to set a trap, and we're going to end this. That night they made their plans. It was dangerous, maybe foolish, but doing nothing meant watching everything they'd built burn piece by piece. Lila listened from the kitchen, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. When the men dispersed to prepare, Cole came to find her. I need you to stay in town tomorrow, he said, with the blacksmith's wife, just for a day or two, until this is finished. No. Lila. I said no, Cole. She set down the coffee cup. You need someone in the house, someone who can watch the approaches, who can signal if something goes wrong. I can do that. I will do that. It's too dangerous. All of this is dangerous, but I'm not running. She stood, facing him directly. You trusted me with a rifle. Trust me with this. He stared at her, frustration and something else, fear maybe, warring in his expression. Finally, he exhaled slowly. You stay inside. Windows shuttered, gun loaded. If anything happens to me, you get to town and find the sheriff. Promise me. I promise. But nothing's going to happen to you. You don't know that. Yes, Lila said quietly. I do. Because you're not alone anymore. Cole left before dawn, taking Ben and Jack with him. The plan was simple in the way desperate things often are. Make Cutter think the ranch was vulnerable, draw him in, catch him in the act. Pete and Sam stayed behind, positioned in the barn and bunkhouse with clear sightlines to the house. Lila watched from the kitchen window as the 3 riders disappeared into the gray pre-dawn light, her stomach tight with worry. The day crawled by. She tried to keep busy, baking bread she didn't need, scrubbing floors that were already clean, checking and rechecking the Winchester propped against the wall. Every sound made her jump. The creak of settling timber, the wind rattling the shutters, a crow calling from the cottonwoods. By noon, her nerves were stretched wire thin. She made coffee, poured a cup, couldn't drink it, stood at the window watching the empty road until her eyes ached. That's when she saw the rider, coming from the south, moving slow and easy like he had all the time in the world. Not Cutter, someone else. A woman, Lila realized as the figure drew closer. Riding astride in a split skirt, her posture slumped with exhaustion. Lila's first instinct was to stay hidden, but something about the rider's movements was wrong. The woman swayed in the saddle, listing to one side. As she reached the yard, Lila saw her face, deathly pale, slicked with sweat despite the cool morning air. The woman slid from the horse and collapsed. Lila didn't think. She grabbed the rifle and ran outside, calling for Pete. The young ranch hand came at a sprint from the barn, his own weapon ready. It's a woman, Lila said, kneeling beside the fallen rider.
She's burning up. Pete kept his rifle trained on the tree line while Lila checked the woman. Her skin was hot to the touch, her breathing shallow and rapid. She was young, maybe 25, with dark hair plastered to her forehead and a dress that had once been fine but was now torn and filthy. "Help me get her inside," Lila said. Between them, they half carried, half dragged the woman into the house. Lila laid her on the sofa, checking for injuries. No blood, no obvious wounds, just fever burning through her like wildfire. The woman's eyes fluttered open, unfocused and glassy. "Please," she whispered. "My baby." Lila's heart stopped. "Where's your baby?" The woman's hand moved weakly toward the door. "Saddlebag." Pete was already moving. He returned moments later carrying a bundle wrapped in a stained blanket. When he pulled back the fabric, Lila saw a tiny face, red and scrunched and impossibly small. "Sweet heaven," Pete breathed. "That baby can't be more than a few days old." Lila took the infant carefully. The child was lighter than seemed possible, its skin mottled and cool. But when she held it against her chest, she felt the flutter of a heartbeat, heard a thin mewling cry. "Alive," she said. "Pete, get water boiling, clean cloths, and send Sam to find Cole. We need the doctor from Rollins. That's 4 hours round trip at least. Then he better ride fast." Lila looked down at the woman on the sofa. Her eyes had closed again, her breathing ragged. "This woman needs help now." Pete ran. Lila settled the baby in the crook of her arm and turned her attention to the mother. She'd tended sick people before. During the fever that killed Thomas, she'd helped nurse half of Cedar Ridge. She knew what to look for. The signs were bad. The woman's fever was dangerously high, her pulse thready and fast. And there was blood, Lila realized, seeping through the woman's skirt. Too much blood. "Stay with me," Lila murmured, bathing the woman's face with cool water. "What's your name?" "Grace." The woman's voice was barely audible. "Grace Whitman." "I'm Lila. You're safe now, Grace. You and your baby both." Grace's hand found Lila's, gripping with surprising strength. "Not my baby. Not anymore." "What do you mean?" "His father..." Grace's breath hitched. "His father is a devil. Took me from my family, kept me locked up. I ran as soon as I could after the baby came. But he'll find me. He always finds me." Lila felt ice slide through her veins. "Who's the father, Grace?" But Grace had slipped back into fevered unconsciousness. Lila worked steadily, changing the soaked cloths, trying to bring down the fever. The baby fussed in her arms, its cries growing stronger. Hungry. Lila had no milk to give, but she found clean water and a bit of cloth, letting the infant suck moisture from the fabric. An hour passed. 2. The baby quieted, falling into fitful sleep. Grace's fever climbed higher, and then, just as the afternoon sun slanted through the western windows, the front door banged open. Lila spun, reaching for the rifle. But it was Cole, his face dark with fury. "Sam said, 'There's a woman.'" He stopped, taking in the scene. Grace unconscious on the sofa. The baby in Lila's arms, blood on the cushions. What happened? She rode in alone, sick with fever. She'd just given birth, days ago, maybe less. "Cole, she's in bad shape." Cole crossed to the sofa, checking Grace's pulse. His expression went grim. "Did she say anything? Where she came from?" "Her name's Grace Whitman. She said the baby's father is dangerous, that he kept her locked up." Lila's voice dropped. "She said he'll come looking for her." "Hell," Cole straightened. "Did she describe him?" Before Lila could answer, Grace's eyes opened. She looked directly at Cole, her gaze suddenly clear and desperate. "You have to promise me," she said. "Promise you'll keep him safe. Don't let Raymond take him. Please." "Raymond?" Cole's voice sharpened. "Raymond who?" "Ashford. Raymond Ashford from Denver." Grace's hand clutched at Cole's sleeve. "He's wealthy, powerful. He'll come for the baby. He wants an heir, someone to carry his name, but he's cruel. He hurt me. He'll hurt my son." Cole's jaw tightened. "You're safe here. We won't let anyone take your child." "No." Grace's grip weakened. "I'm dying. I can feel it. The bleeding won't stop. But the baby, he deserves better than me, better than Raymond. She looked at Lila, tears sliding down her temples. You have kind eyes. Will you take him? Raise him as your own? Lila's throat closed. The baby in her arms stirred, its tiny fist curling against her chest. She looked at Cole, saw her own shock reflected in his face. Grace, you're not going to die, Lila said, but her voice cracked on the lie. Promise me. Grace's breathing was growing labored. Please. I have no one else, no family, nowhere to go. If you don't take him, Raymond will, and he'll raise my son to be just like him. Please. The word hung in the air. Lila looked down at the infant in her arms. So small, so helpless, so utterly dependent. A baby she'd never expected to hold. A child she'd been told she could never have. I promise, she heard herself say. I'll keep him safe. Grace's face relaxed. Relief washed over her features, smoothing away the pain. Thank you. His name is Wesley, after my father. Tell him I loved him. Tell him I'm sorry I couldn't stay. Grace, Lila started, but the woman's eyes were already closing. Cole moved fast, checking for a pulse. He worked for several minutes, trying everything he knew, but Lila could see the truth in the way his shoulders slumped, and the careful gentleness with which he finally laid Grace's hand across her chest. She's gone, he said quietly. Lila held Wesley tighter, tears streaming down her face. The baby slept on, unaware that he'd just become an orphan, unaware that his whole world had changed in the space of a few breaths. What do we do? She whispered. Cole stood slowly, his face carved from stone. We honor her wishes, we keep the baby safe, and we prepare for Raymond Ashford to come looking. The next hours passed in a blur. Ben and Jack returned from their failed attempt to trap Cutter, their faces going still when they saw Grace's body. Pete rode to town to fetch the undertaker and report the death to the sheriff. Lila cleaned Grace's body with careful respect, dressed her in one of her own nightgowns, combed out her dark hair. She looked young in death, peaceful, like she was finally free. They buried her the next morning in the small plot behind the house where Sarah rested. Cole said a few words about mercy and second chances. Lila held Wesley through the whole service, the baby warm and alive against her heart. We don't even know if her story was true, Ben said afterward, standing by the fresh-turned earth. About this Ashford fellow. We'll find out soon enough, Cole said grimly. If he's real and he wants the baby, he'll come. He came 3 days later. Lila was in the kitchen when she heard the sound of multiple horses approaching. Not the usual sounds of ranch work, but something more deliberate, more ominous. She looked out the window and felt her blood run cold. 5 riders. The lead man sat a gleaming black horse, dressed in a suit that probably cost more than everything Lila owned. He was handsome in a cold, precise way. Dark hair swept back from a high forehead, clean-shaven, maybe 40. Behind him rode 4 men who were clearly hired muscle, their hands resting on guns worn low and ready. Cole emerged from the barn, Ben and Jack flanking him. The 2 groups faced each other across the dusty yard like armies before battle. The well-dressed man dismounted with practiced ease, his smile sharp as broken glass. Mr. Mercer, I presume? My name is Raymond Ashford. I believe you have something that belongs to me. I don't know what you're talking about. Cole's voice was flat, giving nothing away. Don't insult my intelligence. Grace Whitman came here. I tracked her this far before losing the trail. Ashford's eyes swept the property with casual arrogance. She was carrying my son. I've come to collect him. There's no one here by that name. Lying won't help you. Ashford's smile never wavered. Grace was unstable, mentally deficient. She ran away with my child during a moment of confusion. I'm here to reclaim my property and ensure the boy receives proper care. Your property? Lila's voice cut through the tension. She stepped onto the porch, Wesley in her arms, her other hand hidden in the folds of her skirt where she gripped a small revolver. Children aren't property, Mr. Ashford. Ashford's attention shifted to her, and Lila felt the full force of his cold appraisal. And you are? Mrs. Hart, the woman Grace Whitman entrusted with her son before she died. Something flickered in Ashford's eyes, surprise, quickly masked. Grace is dead? 3 days ago, Fever and blood loss from childbirth. Lila's voice was steady, despite the fear crawling up her spine. With her last breath, she begged us to keep Wesley safe, to never let you have him. Wesley. Ashford tasted the name like something bitter. She had no right to name him. The boy is mine, my heir, and I will have him. No, Lila said simply. You won't. Ashford's smile disappeared. Mrs. Hart, you don't seem to understand your position. I am a wealthy man with considerable influence. I can make your life extremely difficult. Or, the smile returned, cold and calculating. I can make it very easy. Name your price. $10,000? $20,000? There is no price, Cole said. The woman's dying wish was that we raise her son. We intend to honor that. Her dying wish? Ashford laughed. She was a disturbed woman who seduced me, got herself with child, and then stole my son out of spite. Whatever she told you was lies, delusions. She had bruises, Lila said quietly, old ones, the kind that come from being held down, from being hurt repeatedly, and she was terrified of you. That's not delusion, Mr. Ashford. That's truth. The mask slipped for just a second. Lila saw rage flash across Ashford's face, pure and murderous. Then it was gone, replaced by cold calculation. I see. You've decided to play the hero. Ashford straightened his cuffs. Very well. I'll return with the proper authorities, a court order, legal documentation proving the child is mine, and then you'll hand him over, or you'll go to jail for kidnapping. We'll see what the courts have to say, Cole said. Might be they'll want to hear about how Grace got those bruises, about why she was so desperate to protect her son from his own father. You have no proof of anything, just the ravings of the dead woman. Ashford mounted his horse with liquid grace. I'll be back in a week, with a judge, with papers, with everything I need to take what's mine. Enjoy your time with the boy, Mrs. Hart. It won't last long. He wheeled his horse and rode out, his men following. They didn't hurry, didn't need to. The message was clear. Ashford was confident in his power, in his ability to take whatever he wanted. Cole waited until they were out of sight, then turned to Lila. Get inside. We need to talk. In the kitchen, Lila laid Wesley in the makeshift cradle they'd fashioned from a drawer lined with blankets. The baby slept peacefully, unaware of the storm gathering around him. He's going to take him, Lila said. Money like that? Influence like that? The courts will side with him. Not if we can prove Grace's claims. Cole paced the kitchen, his mind working. Ben, ride to Denver. Find out everything you can about Raymond Ashford. Business dealings, reputation, anything that might help us. That'll take days, Ben protested. Then leave now. We've got a week before he comes back. We need ammunition for this fight. Ben nodded and left at a run. Jack followed to help him prepare. Cole sank into a chair, his face drawn. I should never have let you promise her, he said. Should have known this would happen. You didn't let me do anything. I chose. Lila sat across from him. And I meant it, Cole. I won't let that man take Wesley, not after seeing what he did to Grace. He's the father. Legally, that gives him rights. Rights? Lila's voice shook with anger. He kept Grace prisoner. He hurt her. He drove her to run days after giving birth, so desperate to save her child that she rode until it killed her. Those aren't the actions of a father. They're the actions of a monster. Cole was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, When Sarah died, I made her a promise too, that I'd honor her wishes no matter what, that I'd keep fighting for the things she believed in. He met Lila's eyes. She believed children deserved love, protection, safety, not to be used as pawns or property. Then we fight, Lila said, however we have to. You understand what that means? Ashford's not going to play fair. He's already proven he'll hurt women to get what he wants. If we stand against him... I know. Lila looked down at Wesley, sleeping so peacefully. But I held this baby while his mother died. I made her a promise, and I won't break it. The next days were a frenzy of preparation. Cole rode to Rawlins and filed papers with the territorial court, documenting Grace's death, her final wishes, and Ashford's threats. The sheriff, finally returned from his travels, listened to the story with a troubled expression. It's a difficult situation, Sheriff Morrison said. Ashford's got money and lawyers. You've got a dying woman's word and not much else. What about the bruises? Cole pressed. The undertaker saw them, documented them. Bruises fade, and Ashford will claim they came from her difficult journey, not from him. Morrison sighed. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying you need more than sympathy to win this fight. Then tell me what we need. Proof. Witnesses. Someone who can testify to Ashford's character, and a damn good lawyer wouldn't hurt. Cole left the sheriff's office feeling the weight of impossible odds. But when he returned to the ranch that evening, Lila met him with news that changed everything. A woman came while you were gone, she said. She wouldn't give her name, but she said she knew Grace, said she had information about Ashford. Where is she? I offered her food and rest, but she was too afraid. Said she'd come back tonight after dark. Didn't want to be seen. Lila's eyes were bright with hope. Cole, she had marks on her wrists, the same kind Grace had. Understanding dawned cold and clear. Another victim. Maybe, or maybe someone who can help us prove what kind of man Ashford really is. The woman returned as promised, slipping through the darkness like a ghost. She was older than Grace, perhaps 30, with faded blonde hair and eyes that had seen too much. She sat at the kitchen table with her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee, her whole body trembling. My name is Margaret, she said finally. Margaret Hollis. I worked in Raymond Ashford's house in Denver, as a maid. What happened? Lila asked gently. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. He was kind at first, charming. Said he appreciated my work. Then he started watching me, following me, making comments. She swallowed hard. One night, he came to my room. Said I should be grateful for his attention. When I refused, she didn't need to finish. The bruises around her throat, mostly faded but still visible, told the story. I ran, Margaret continued. Got away before he could do worse. But I heard about Grace, about how he kept her locked in the East Wing, about the baby. She looked at Lila with desperate intensity. Is the child safe? For now, Cole said. But Ashford's coming back with a judge. He wants to take the boy. You can't let him. Margaret's voice broke. Please. Whatever Grace suffered, it was worse than what he did to me. I heard her screaming sometimes, heard her begging, and Ashford would just laugh. Will you testify? Cole asked. In court? If it comes to that? Margaret went pale. He'll destroy me. He has money, influence. He'll make sure I never work again. Might do worse. I know what we're asking, Lila said quietly. She reached across the table, taking Margaret's shaking hand. But that baby upstairs is innocent. And if good people don't stand up to men like Ashford, monsters win. Every time. Margaret looked at their joined hands for a long moment. Then she nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. I'll testify. I'll tell them everything. Ben returned 2 days later with information that painted an even darker picture. Ashford had been married twice before. Both wives had died under mysterious circumstances. He'd been investigated for assault 3 times, but charges were always dropped after generous settlements. And there were whispers, Ben said, of other women who disappeared after working in his household. He's untouchable, Ben said grimly. Or he thinks he is. Then we show him he's not, Cole said. The week passed too quickly. Lila spent her days caring for Wesley, feeding him with a bottle, rocking him when he cried, marveling at his tiny fingers, his dark eyes that were just beginning to focus. She'd never expected to hold a baby of her own. Never imagined the fierce protective love that flooded through her every time Wesley looked at her. I won't let him go, she whispered to the sleeping infant. I promise. On the 7th day, Ashford returned. This time he brought a judge, 2 lawyers, and a document claiming legal guardianship of Wesley Ashford, son of Raymond Ashford, and Grace Whitman, deceased. The hearing was held in the Rawlins Courthouse, a small wooden building that served as courtroom, town hall, and occasional church. Half the county turned out to watch, packing the benches, spilling into the street. Judge Hendricks presided, a weathered man in his 60s with sharp eyes and a reputation for fairness. He read through Ashford's petition with methodical care, then looked up. Mr. Mercer, Mrs. Hart, you're contesting this claim? We are, Your Honor, Cole said, standing.
on the grounds that Grace Whitman's final wishes were that we raise her son and that Mr. Ashford is unfit to be a father. Ashford's lawyer, a slick man from Denver named Patterson, rose smoothly. Your Honor, this is a transparent attempt to steal my client's rightful heir, Mrs. Whitman was not of sound mind when she made these alleged requests. She was suffering from fever, delusion, and the trauma of a difficult birth. Her words cannot be considered a legally binding testament. We have a witness to her final statement, Cole countered. Mrs. Hart was present and can testify to Grace Whitman's exact words. The testimony of an interested party, Patterson said dismissively. Mrs. Hart stands to gain custody of a child. Her testimony is biased. Then perhaps you'd like to hear from someone with no stake in the outcome, Cole said. He nodded to the back of the room. Margaret Hollis, please come forward. Margaret stood on shaking legs and made her way to the front. Ashford's face went white, then red. He leaned over to whisper furiously to Patterson, but the lawyer waved him quiet. Miss Hollis, Judge Hendricks said, state your business. Margaret's voice was soft but steady. I worked in Mr. Ashford's household for 6 months. During that time, I witnessed him abuse Grace Whitman repeatedly. He kept her locked in the East Wing, struck her when she disobeyed. And when she became pregnant, her voice caught. He said the baby would ensure she could never leave, that she belonged to him. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Ashford shot to his feet. That's a lie. This woman is a disgruntled former employee seeking revenge. Is it? Cole said quietly. He held up a stack of papers. Because we have hospital records from Denver General. Grace Whitman was treated there twice for injuries consistent with assault. Both times she named Raymond Ashford as her attacker. Both times he paid the hospital to keep quiet. Patterson was on his feet. Your Honor, those records were obtained illegally. They were obtained through a legal records request, Cole interrupted, and they prove a pattern of violence. Judge Hendricks took the papers, reading carefully. The courtroom held its breath. Finally, the judge looked up. Mr. Ashford, I'm going to ask you directly. Did you strike Grace Whitman? Ashford's composure cracked. She was hysterical, unreasonable. Sometimes discipline was necessary. Discipline? Lila's voice cut through the courtroom. She stood, holding Wesley. You beat a pregnant woman and call it discipline? Mrs. Hart, the judge warned. But Lila wasn't finished. She unwrapped the blanket around Wesley, revealing the baby's tiny body. Grace died to save this child from you. She rode for days while bleeding to death because she was more afraid of you than of dying. That's not discipline, Mr. Ashford. That's terror. The courtroom was silent. Every eye was on Wesley, on his small, helpless form. Judge Hendricks cleared his throat. Mr. Ashford, given the evidence presented, the hospital records, Miss Hollis's testimony, and the circumstances of Mrs. Whitman's death, I cannot in good conscience award you custody of this child. Ashford went white. You can't. I'm his father. Being a father is more than biology, the judge said sternly. It's about providing a safe, loving home, and I don't believe you can offer that. This is outrageous. I'll appeal. I'll take this to the Territorial Supreme Court. You're welcome to try, Judge Hendricks said, but until such time as you can prove you're fit to raise a child, custody of Wesley Whitman will remain with Mr. Mercer and Mrs. Hart. He banged his gavel. Court dismissed. The room erupted. Ashford was shouting, his lawyers trying to calm him. Margaret was crying with relief. And Lila stood holding Wesley, tears streaming down her face, as Cole's arm came around her shoulders. We won, she whispered. Not yet, Cole said quietly. Look at his face. Ashford stood in the center of the chaos, his mask completely shattered. What Lila saw beneath was pure, cold rage. As he met her eyes across the courtroom, he smiled. It was the most terrifying thing she'd ever seen. They left the courthouse under Sheriff Morrison's escort, Wesley bundled against Lila's chest while Cole and Ben flanked her on either side. The crowd parted, some faces sympathetic, others curious, a few openly hostile. Money bought loyalty, and Ashford had plenty of both. Get them home safe, Morrison told Cole quietly. And watch your back. A man like Ashford doesn't take losing well. Cole's hand rested on his gun. I know. The ride back to the ranch took 3 tense hours. Every shadow seemed to hide a threat, every distant rider a potential ambush. But they made it without incident, and as the familiar valley opened before them, Lila felt some of the tension ease from her shoulders. "He won't give up," she said as Cole helped her down from the wagon. "No, he won't." Cole took Wesley while Lila stretched her aching back. "But we bought ourselves time, and we proved he's not untouchable." Margaret had come with them, too frightened to return to Denver alone. Lila settled her in the guest room with promises of safety and work if she wanted it. The woman wept with gratitude, her hands shaking as she unpacked her small bag. "I never thought anyone would stand up to him," Margaret said. "Never thought it was possible." "It's possible," Lila assured her. "We just proved it." But that night, lying in bed with Wesley sleeping in his cradle beside her, Lila couldn't shake the memory of Ashford's smile. It had promised retribution, promised pain, and she knew with cold certainty that the battle was far from over. She was proven right 2 nights later. Lila woke to the sound of cattle screaming, not lowing in distress, screaming, high and terrible, the sound of animals in mortal terror. She grabbed the Winchester and ran downstairs in her nightgown, her heart hammering. Cole was already outside, backlit by orange light. Fire. The east pasture was burning, flames racing through the dry summer grass, driven by wind toward the herd. "Get dressed and stay with Wesley," Cole shouted over the roar. "Don't come out unless the house catches." Then he was running toward the chaos, Ben and the ranch hands with him. Lila watched from the window, helpless, as they fought to turn the cattle, to save what they could. The fire spread fast, too fast, eating through grass and sage with terrible hunger. It took 3 hours to contain. By the time the sun rose, half the east pasture was blackened wasteland. They'd lost 30 head of cattle, 2 sections of fence, and a storage shed full of winter feed. The men stumbled back to the house covered in soot and ash, their faces grim. "Arson," Ben said flatly, dropping into a chair. "Found boot prints near where it started. And this." He laid a silver cufflink on the table. "Expensive. Engraved with the letter A." Cole picked it up, his jaw tight. "He's sending a message." "What message?" Lila asked, though she already knew. "That he can hurt us whenever he wants. That the law won't protect us." Cole's voice was rough with smoke and exhaustion. "That we should give him what he wants before he takes everything." "We can't give him Wesley." "I know." Cole met her eyes. "But we need to be smart about this. Ashford's playing a long game. Every fire, every act of sabotage. He's building a case that we're unfit guardians, that we can't protect the boy." "Then we prove we can," Lila said. "We rebuild. We stand firm. We show him we won't break." Jack spoke up from the doorway, his young face hard. "Maybe we should fight back. Show him what happens when you threaten a Mercer ranch." "No." Cole's voice was steel. "That's what he wants. An excuse to call us violent, unstable, to take Wesley through the courts or by force." He stood, rolling his shoulders. "We stay legal, we stay smart, and we watch our backs every second." Sheriff Morrison rode out that afternoon to investigate. He examined the boot prints, the cufflink, the burn pattern. His face grew darker with each piece of evidence. "It's Ashford's work, no question," he said. "But proving it in court is another matter. Any halfway decent lawyer will say the cufflink was planted, that the prints could belong to anyone." "So, he gets away with it?" Lila demanded. "I didn't say that." Morrison's eyes were flint. "I'm going to Denver myself, going to dig into Ashford's business dealings, talk to people who might have grudges. Man that ruthless has made enemies. Maybe one of them will help us nail him." "How long will that take?" Cole asked. "Week? Maybe 2. Morrison tipped his hat to Lila. "Meanwhile, you folks keep your powder dry and your eyes open. And Mrs. Hart, that baby's lucky to have you." After he left, Lila carried Wesley out to the porch. The afternoon sun slanted across the scorched pasture, turning the blackened earth to shadow. The damage was extensive but not fatal. They would recover. They had to. Wesley stirred in her arms, his dark eyes opening. He looked up at her with the unfocused gaze of infancy, completely trusting, completely dependent. Lila's throat tightened. "Your mother loved you so much," she whispered. "She died to keep you safe. And I won't let her sacrifice be for nothing. The baby's tiny hand wrapped around her finger. Such a small gesture, but it felt like a covenant. Cole found her there an hour later. He sat down on the porch steps, his body heavy with exhaustion. "We lost almost $4,000 worth of cattle and feed," he said quietly. "Insurance won't cover arson, and even if it did, claims take months. We're heading into fall with half our winter stores gone." "What does that mean?" "Means we'll have to sell off more of the herd than I planned, thin our breeding stock. Maybe let some of the hands go." He rubbed his face. "It means Ashford's winning." "No," Lila's voice was firm. "He's hurting us. That's different from winning." Cole looked at her, something shifting in his expression. "You're not what I expected, Lila Hart." "What did you expect?" "Someone who'd run at the first sign of trouble, someone who wanted an easy life." He shook his head. "Instead, I got you, stubborn as a mule, brave as a lion, and too damn principled for your own good." "Is that a compliment?" "It's a fact." Cole stood, offering his hand. "Come on, let's get some food in the men. They've earned it." Dinner that night was subdued. The ranch hands ate in silence, the weight of loss heavy on all of them. But when Lila brought out dried apple pie, saved from before the fire, Jack managed a tired smile. "You spoil us, Mrs. Hart." "Someone has to." She refilled coffee cups, her movements automatic. "Besides, we all need something sweet after a day like today." After the men left, Cole helped her wash dishes. It was companionable work, their hands moving in practiced rhythm. He washed, she dried. Neither spoke, but the silence was comfortable. "I keep thinking about Grace," Lila said finally, "about how desperate she must have been, how much courage it took to run." "Takes courage to stay too," Cole said. "You could leave, Lila, take Wesley somewhere safe, somewhere Ashford can't reach." "And abandon the ranch? Abandon you?" Lila set down her dish towel. "No, this is my home. These are my people. I'm not running." "Even if it means putting Wesley in danger?" "Wesley's in danger no matter where we go. At least here, we're fighting back." She met his eyes. "Besides, I made a promise to Grace. And I made one to you, too, the day I arrived, remember? I said I choose to be here. That hasn't changed." Cole was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Sarah used to say that the measure of a person isn't what they do when life is easy. It's what they do when everything falls apart." She sounds like she was wise. She was. Stubborn, too. Refused to let me coddle her, even when she got sick. His voice roughened. She fought till the very end. Made me promise I'd keep living, keep building. That I wouldn't let grief turn me bitter. Have you kept that promise? Cole's smile was sad. I'm trying. Some days are harder than others. Lila reached out, touching his hand briefly. You're doing better than you think. The next week brought more trouble. Fences cut in the night, water poisoned in one of the stock tanks, cattle driven onto neighboring property causing disputes with other ranchers. Each incident was small, deniable, designed to erode their position slowly. The town began to turn. Whispers spread that the Mercer Ranch was cursed, that Lila and Cole had no business raising Ashford's son, that they were bringing trouble on the whole county. Some merchants refused their business. Others charged double. People are afraid, Ben explained after being run out of the feed store. Ashford's money goes a long way. Nobody wants to cross him. So we're alone, Lila said. Not entirely. Ben pulled out a letter. This came from a rancher up in Montana. Says he knew one of Ashford's dead wives. Says he'd testify to suspicious circumstances around her death if we need him. It was something. A small hope. Cole sent word to Sheriff Morrison, who was still investigating in Denver. Every piece of evidence mattered. Meanwhile, life on the ranch continued. Lila cared for Wesley, watching him grow stronger each day. His cries became more demanding, his grip more sure. She talked to him constantly, telling him stories about his mother, about courage and sacrifice. Your mama was brave, she murmured one evening while rocking him to sleep. She loved you more than her own life. And someday, when you're old enough to understand, I'll tell you everything. I'll make sure you know her. Cole stood in the doorway, listening. When Lila looked up, she saw something raw in his expression.
You're good with him, he said. I love him. The words came easily, naturally. I didn't expect to, but I do. He's mine now, Cole, in every way that matters. And if Ashford wins, if the courts take him, they won't. Lila's voice was steel wrapped in velvet. I won't let them. 2 weeks after the fire, a lawyer from Denver arrived at the ranch. He was young, nervous, and carried a thick folder of documents. My name is Thomas Brennan, he said. I represent the firm of Caldwell and Sons. We've been retained by an anonymous client to assist in your custody case. Cole's eyes narrowed. Who's the client? I'm not at liberty to say, but they have a personal interest in seeing Raymond Ashford brought to justice. Brennan opened his folder. I have testimony from 3 more women who worked in Ashford's household, hospital records documenting injuries, and evidence that Ashford has been bribing judges and law enforcement across 2 territories. Lila felt hope flare bright and hot. This is enough to stop him? It's enough to file criminal charges, assault, intimidation, possibly conspiracy. Brennan's young face was determined. But we need to move fast. Ashford knows we're gathering evidence. He's getting desperate. How desperate? Cole asked. The answer came that night. Lila woke to Wesley's crying. Not his usual hungry wail, but something sharper, frightened. She lit the lamp with shaking hands and found the window open, cold air streaming in. She hadn't left it open. Her blood turned to ice. She grabbed Wesley from his cradle and ran for Cole's room, pounding on his door. Someone was in my room! Cole emerged in seconds, gun drawn. He checked every corner, every shadow, found nothing. But on Lila's pillow lay a single white rose and a note written in elegant script. The boy belongs with his father. Give him up, or I'll take him, and I'll make you watch. Lila's hands shook as she read it. Wesley wailed in her arms, sensing her fear. He was here, she whispered, inside the house, while we slept. Cole's face was carved from stone. Ben! Jack! Get up here now! The men searched the property, found a ladder propped against the side of the house, boot prints in the dirt beneath Lila's window. Someone had climbed up, slipped inside, left their threat, and vanished. Could have killed us all, Ben said grimly. Could have taken the baby, and we'd never have known till morning. Why didn't he? Lila asked. Because he wants you scared, Cole said. Wants you to hand Wesley over willingly. Makes him look like the hero, saving his son from unstable guardians. I won't be scared into submission. I know. But we can't stay here. Not if Ashford can get to you this easily. Cole's jaw worked. Tomorrow, I'm taking you and Wesley to town. You'll stay with Sheriff Morrison's wife until this is over. No. Lila. Cole gripped her shoulders, his eyes fierce. I can't protect you here, not from someone willing to break into your bedroom. Please, let me keep you safe. She wanted to argue, wanted to insist on staying, on fighting, but looking down at Wesley's small, vulnerable face, she knew Cole was right. The baby's safety had to come first. All right, she whispered, but only until we can end this. I'm not hiding forever. You won't have to. Cole's voice was grim promise. Because I'm done playing defense. It's time to take the fight to Ashford. The next morning, Cole drove Lila and Wesley to Rawlins. Sheriff Morrison's wife, a kind woman named Eleanor, welcomed them with warm arms and promises of protection. You'll be safe here, Eleanor assured her. Morrison's got deputies watching the house round the clock. Lila settled into the guest room, feeling displaced and helpless. She hated leaving the ranch, hated the feeling of running away. But every time Wesley looked at her with those trusting eyes, she knew she'd made the right choice. Cole stayed only long enough to unload her trunk. At the door, he paused. I'll send word every day, he said, and as soon as it's safe, you're coming home. What are you going to do? Whatever it takes. His expression was hard. Ashford drew first blood. Time to show him what happens when you threaten a mercer. He left before she could ask what that meant. Lila watched from the window as he rode away, his shoulders set with determination. 3 days later, news reached town. Raymond Ashford had been arrested in Denver on charges of assault, extortion, and conspiracy. Evidence provided by attorney Thomas Brennan, backed by testimony from multiple witnesses, had convinced a federal judge to issue a warrant. Ashford fought it.
Hired the best lawyers money could buy, called in every favor he was owed. But the evidence was damning. Hospital records, witness testimony, teats, financial documents showing bribes paid to law enforcement. And then the final blow fell. Sheriff Morrison returned from Denver with a woman, elderly, dignified, with Ashford's eyes. His mother. "My son is a monster," she told the court in a voice shaking with grief and rage. "I've known it for years. Watched him hurt people. Covered for him because he's my blood. But no more. That baby deserves better, deserves love, not to be used as a pawn for inheritance." With his own mother's testimony against him, Ashford's case collapsed. The judge revoked his custody claim permanently and added child endangerment to the criminal charges. Ashford was looking at years in prison. Word reached Lila the same day. She was feeding Wesley when Eleanor burst into the room, waving a telegram. "It's over. They arrested him. You won." Lila's hands shook so badly she almost dropped the bottle. "Are you certain?" "Morrison sent word himself. Says Ashford won't see daylight for a decade at least."
Eleanor laughed, tears streaming down her face. "That baby's yours, Lila. Legally, permanently yours." Lila looked down at Wesley, who gazed back at her with perfect trust. And for the first time in months, the knot of fear in her chest loosened. "Did you hear that, sweet boy?" she whispered. "You're safe now. You're home." But even in victory, doubt whispered. Ashford was arrested, but his reach was long. His money could buy appeals, reversals. Nothing was truly finished until he was convicted and sentenced. Cole arrived that evening, his face showing the first real peace she'd seen in weeks. He swept into Eleanor's parlor and pulled Lila into a fierce hug. Wesley pressed between them. "It's done," he said. "He can't touch you anymore." "Are you sure?" "Morrison says the case is airtight. Between his mother's testimony and all the evidence Brennan gathered, Ashford's finished." Cole pulled back, his hands on her shoulders. "You can come home, Lila, both of you." Home. The words settled around her like a warm blanket. "Tomorrow," she said. "Let's go home tomorrow." That night, Lila sat by the window with Wesley sleeping in her arms, watching the stars emerge. She thought about Grace, about the desperate courage it had taken to run, about the promise made and kept. "I hope you can see him," she whispered to the darkness. "I hope you know he's safe, that he's loved." The stars blazed cold and distant, offering no answer, but Lila felt deep in her bones that somewhere Grace Whitman was at peace. The ride back to the ranch the next day felt different, lighter. The valley opened before them like a benediction, the mountains standing guard, the creek singing its eternal song. When they crested the final ridge and the house came into view, Lila felt tears prick her eyes. Ben and the ranch hands were waiting. They'd cleaned up the fire damage, repaired the fences, even planted flowers by the front porch. A welcome home. "Figured you'd want things nice for the little one," Ben said gruffly, his weathered face creasing with a smile. That night, Lila put Wesley to bed in a proper cradle Cole had built, oak and pine carved with birds and clouds. She wound the small music box Eleanor had gifted them, letting the tinkling melody fill the room. "Sleep, little one," she sang softly. "You're home now, you're safe, and you're so, so loved." Downstairs, she found Cole on the porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and crimson. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" she said, joining him. Yes, but he was looking at her, not the mountains. Lila felt heat rise in her cheeks. Something had shifted between them during the fight for Wesley. The walls they'd both maintained had crumbled, leaving raw honesty in their place. "Cole, I need to tell you something." "I need to tell you something too." He turned to face her fully. "When you came here, I told you this was just an arrangement, business, nothing more." "I remember. I was wrong." The words came slowly, carefully chosen. "You're not my housekeeper, Lila. Haven't been for a long time. You're my partner, my friend. Maybe more than that if you'd—" He stopped, uncertainty crossing his face. Lila's heart was hammering. "If I'd what?" "If you'd consider making this real. Not an arrangement, a marriage, a family." Cole's voice was rough. I can't offer you much, just a working ranch, a hard life, and a man who's still learning how to open his heart again. But I can promise you honesty, respect, and time to see if maybe we could build something lasting." Lila looked at this man who'd given her shelter, who'd fought for a child that wasn't his, who'd stood beside her through fire and fear, who'd let her see his grief and his hope. "I don't need time," she said quietly. "I already know." "Yes, Cole. Yes to all of it." His smile was like sunrise, slow, warm, transforming. He reached for her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "Then let's do this right," he said. "Proper wedding, proper vows. Make it real in every way that matters." "I'd like that." Lila squeezed his hand. "But Cole, we're already a family, Wesley and you and me. The wedding will just be making it official." "True." He pulled her close, resting his chin on her head. "But I want the world to know. Want everyone to see that you're mine and I'm yours. That we chose each other." They stood together as night fell, the stars emerging one by one. Inside, Wesley slept peacefully, safe, loved, home. And for the first time since Thomas died, Lila felt whole. The weeks following Cole's proposal should have been peaceful, should have been filled with wedding plans and quiet joy. Instead, they brought a tension that wouldn't break, like thunder building behind distant mountains. Ashford remained in Denver awaiting trial, but his silence felt more ominous than his threats. No more fires, no more cut fences, no midnight visits, just stillness that made Lila's shoulders tight and her sleep restless. "I don't trust it," she told Cole one morning while kneading bread. Wesley lay in his cradle nearby, gurgling at the dust motes dancing in the sunlight. "He's planning something. Maybe he's finally accepting defeat." But Cole's hand rested near his gun even as he said it. "Brennan says the prosecution's case is solid. Ashford's looking at 15 years minimum. Men like him don't accept anything." Lila punched the dough harder than necessary. "They find ways around obstacles. They buy their way out." She was proven right 3 days later when Sheriff Morrison arrived at dawn, his face grim. "Ashford made bail," he said without preamble. "Judge in Denver set it at $50,000. He posted it yesterday morning." Cole went very still. "How?" "His mother. She put up her entire estate as collateral." Morrison rubbed his face tiredly. "Woman's 80 years old, worth millions. Judge couldn't refuse the bond." "But she testified against him," Lila protested. "She called him a monster." "She's also his mother. Blood runs deep, I guess." Morrison's jaw tightened. "I've got deputies watching the roads, but he could be anywhere. I came to warn you. Don't assume this is over." After Morrison left, Cole gathered the ranch hands. "We're going back to rotating watches. Nobody goes anywhere alone. And Lila," he turned to her, "you keep that Winchester loaded." "I haven't stopped," she said quietly. That night, Lila woke to Wesley crying. Not his usual fussy wail, but genuine distress. She lit the lamp and found him burning with fever, his tiny face flushed and hot. "Cole!" Her voice carried through the house. "Something's wrong with Wesley." Cole appeared in seconds. One touch of the baby's forehead and his face went tight. "He's burning up. We need to get his temperature down." They worked together through the night. Cool cloths, careful sponging, drops of water to keep him hydrated. Wesley's cries weakened to whimpers, his little body going limp with exhaustion. "Please," Lila whispered, rocking him. "Please be all right." By morning, the fever had broken. Wesley slept peacefully, his breathing even, his color better. Lila slumped in relief, her own exhaustion catching up with her. "He's strong," Cole said, touching the baby's soft hair. "Like his mother. Like you." "I've never been so scared," Lila's voice shook. "When I thought we might lose him." "I know." Cole pulled her close, Wesley between them. "But he's all right. We're all right." They stayed that way as sunrise painted the room gold. 3 people who'd chosen each other against all odds. A found family, cobbled together from loss and hope. The morning brought more news. Ben returned from town with a telegram from Thomas Brennan in Denver. Cole read it twice, his expression darkening.
Ashford's filed an appeal. Claims the evidence against him was obtained illegally. He's asking for all charges to be dismissed. Can he do that? Lila asked. He can try. Brennan says it's a stalling tactic, but it could delay the trial for months. Cole crumpled the telegram. Months of looking over our shoulders, months of waiting for him to strike. Then we don't wait. Lila's voice was steel. We take the fight to him. How? The law's already involved. What more can we do? Find the truth about his other wives, about the women who disappeared. Lila's mind was racing. Ashford's mother said she'd known for years he was dangerous. That means she has evidence, documents, letters, something. We just need to convince her to share it. Cole looked at her with something like awe. That's assuming she'll talk to us. She just bailed him out. She bailed out her son. Doesn't mean she wants him free to hurt more people. Lila set her jaw. I'm going to Denver. I'm going to talk to her. Absolutely not. It's too dangerous. Cole, listen to me. Lila took his hands. Every day Ashford's free, Wesley's in danger. Our ranch is in danger. This won't end until we end it. And sometimes the only way to kill a monster is to go straight into its lair. Then I'm coming with you. No, you're needed here. The ranch, the men, they need you. She squeezed his hands. Besides, Ashford won't expect me to come to him. That gives me an advantage. Lila, trust me, she said simply. The way I've trusted you. Cole was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. Take Ben with you. And promise me you'll be careful. I promise. 2 days later, Lila stood on the doorstep of the Ashford mansion in Denver's wealthiest district. The house was massive, 3 stories of brick and marble, with manicured gardens and an iron fence that looked more like a prison than decoration. Ben waited with the carriage, his rifle ready. You sure about this, Mrs. Hart? No, but I'm doing it anyway. The butler who answered the door looked down his nose at Lila's simple traveling dress. Mrs. Ashford is not receiving visitors. Tell her Lila Hart is here about her grandson. Tell her I have questions about Grace Whitman. Lila kept her voice steady. If she wants to protect Wesley, she'll see me. The butler's expression flickered. He disappeared inside, leaving Lila on the doorstep. 5 minutes passed, 10. Then he returned, his manner slightly less condescending. Mrs. Ashford will see you, briefly. Lila followed him through halls lined with portraits and expensive furniture. Everything spoke of old money, old power. The kind that believed it could buy anything, anyone. Mrs. Ashford waited in a drawing room that overlooked the gardens. She was small and elegant, dressed in black silk, her white hair perfectly coiffed. But her eyes were tired, ancient. Mrs. Hart, her voice was cultured, weary. You have courage coming here. I have a son to protect. Lila sat without being invited. The same son you called your grandson in court. Wesley. The old woman's face softened. How is he? Safe. For now. But your son won't stop until he destroys us or takes Wesley. You know that. I know my son is capable of terrible things. Mrs. Ashford's hands trembled as she poured tea. I've known since he was 14, and I found our housemaid beaten unconscious in the cellar. I paid her family to keep quiet, made excuses, told myself he would outgrow it. But he didn't. No, he got worse, more careful, more cunning. Tears glittered in the old woman's eyes. His first wife, Catherine, died falling down the stairs. His second, Louise, drowned in the bath. The authorities believed it was accidents. I knew better. Lila's chest tightened. Then why did you bail him out? Because he's my son, Mrs. Ashford's voice broke. Because despite everything, I love him. Because I'm a foolish old woman who keeps hoping for redemption that will never come. Mrs. Ashford, may I call you Victoria? The old woman nodded. Victoria, love doesn't mean enabling evil. It doesn't mean protecting someone from consequences. Lila leaned forward. Your son hurt Grace so badly that she died running from him. He's threatened to kill me. He's tried to burn down our home. If you truly love him, you'll stop him before he destroys himself completely. Victoria was silent for a long moment, tears sliding down her powdered cheeks. What do you want from me? Evidence? Proof of what he's done. Letters, documents, anything that will ensure he's convicted and locked away. Lila's voice gentled. Help me protect Wesley. Help me stop Raymond before he kills again. If I give you evidence, I lose my son. You've already lost him. You lost him the first time he raised his hand to hurt someone and you covered for him. Lila reached across the tea service, touching the old woman's trembling hand. But you can save his victims. You can save Wesley. That's a kind of redemption, too. Victoria closed her eyes. When she opened them, something had shifted, hardened. Wait here. She left the room, her silk dress whispering against the carpet. Lila sat alone, her heart pounding. Through the window she could see Ben pacing beside the carriage, watchful. 20 minutes passed. Then Victoria returned carrying a leather portfolio. These are letters from Catherine and Louise, documentation of their injuries, payments I made to doctors, to police, to keep things quiet. Her voice was hollow. And this, she pulled out a thick envelope, is a confession Raymond wrote when he was 16, after he nearly killed a girl. I kept it, thinking someday I might need it. Lila took the portfolio with shaking hands. Thank you. Don't thank me. I should have done this years ago. Victoria's face was carved from grief. Save that baby, Mrs. Hart. Make sure some good comes from all this horror. I will. I promise. As Lila stood to leave, Victoria spoke again. Mrs. Hart, be careful. Raymond knows I testified against him. He knows I'm the weak link. He may come here. Do you have protection? The servants are loyal, and I'm an old woman. I'm not afraid of dying. Victoria's smile was sad. I'm only afraid of what I've unleashed on the world by protecting him. Lila wanted to offer comfort, but there were no words adequate to the weight of such guilt. She simply nodded and left, the portfolio clutched against her chest like a shield. Ben drove fast out of Denver, checking constantly for pursuit. They were an hour out when Lila finally allowed herself to breathe. Did you get it? Ben asked. Everything we need. Lila opened the portfolio, scanning documents, payments to coroners, threatening letters in Raymond's hand, photographs of injuries, a catalog of violence spanning 20 years. This'll bury him, Ben said with satisfaction, if we can get it to Brennan in time. Lila checked the road behind them. Ashford has to know his mother talked to us. He'll try to stop this evidence from reaching the prosecutor. She was right. They were 2 hours from Rawlins when riders appeared on the road behind them. 5 men, riding hard. Lila recognized the lead horse, Ashford's gleaming black gelding. Ben, he's coming! Hold on! Ben whipped the horses into a gallop. The carriage bounced violently over the rutted road, wheels skidding on loose gravel. The riders gained steadily. A gunshot cracked, splintering the wood near Lila's head. Get down! Ben shouted. Lila ducked, clutching the portfolio. Another shot, closer this time. She pulled her small revolver from her bag, checking the load with shaking hands. There's a canyon up ahead, Ben called over the thunder of hooves. If we can reach it, there's cover. They careened around a bend. The canyon opened before them, steep walls, narrow road, nowhere to turn. Ben drove straight in, the horses foam-flecked and wild-eyed. The pursuing riders followed. In the confined space, their numbers were less advantage. Ben pulled the carriage around a boulder and jumped down, rifle ready. Stay in the carriage, he ordered Lila. Like hell. She scrambled out, portfolio tucked in her bodice, gun in hand. The riders charged into the canyon. Ben's first shot took down the lead horse. The rider tumbled, rolling clear. The others scattered, taking cover behind rocks. Give me the documents, Mrs. Hart. Ashford's voice echoed off the canyon walls. Give them to me and I'll let you live. You'll kill us anyway, Lila shouted back. Probably, but this way might be quicker. A shot rang out from behind the carriage. Not Ben, someone else. Lila spun and saw Cole rising from behind a boulder, Jack and Sam with him. They must have followed from the ranch, tracking their route. You're surrounded, Ashford, Cole's voice was iron. Throw down your weapons. For a moment, everything balanced on a knife's edge. Then Ashford laughed, high and wild. You think this ends here? I'll appeal. I'll buy judges. I'll hunt you for the rest of your lives. He stood from his cover, gun raised. That baby is mine, and I always get what's... The shot came from an unexpected direction. Ashford staggered, his gun falling. He looked down at the blood spreading across his chest, with something like surprise. Sheriff Morrison emerged from the canyon's far end, rifle still smoking. "Raymond Ashford, you're under arrest for attempted murder. Again." Ashford collapsed, his men throwing down their weapons. Morrison's deputies swarmed in, securing the scene. Cole ran to Lila, pulling her into his arms. "Are you hurt?" "No, I'm all right." She was shaking, adrenaline making her knees weak. "Cole, I have everything. Letters, confessions, proof of everything he's done." "Morrison, you hear that?" Cole called. The sheriff walked over, his face grim. "Ashford's still alive. Barely. We'll get him to a doctor, then straight to jail." He looked at the portfolio Lila pulled from her bodice. "That the evidence?" "Everything his mother kept for 20 years. Morrison's smile was hard. "Then he's done. Even if he survives, he'll hang for what he's done." They made camp in the canyon that night, too exhausted to travel. Cole built a fire while Lila sat wrapped in blankets, still trembling from the chase. Morrison's deputies guarded the prisoners. Ashford lay unconscious, his breathing shallow. "He might not make it till morning," Morrison said quietly. "Bullet nicked his lung." Lila felt nothing. No pity, no satisfaction, just numbness. Cole found her staring into the fire. "You should rest. I keep thinking about Victoria, about how she knew what he was and protected him anyway." Lila's voice was hollow. "How many people suffered because she chose her son over justice? You can't blame yourself for other people's choices." "I don't. I just—" She turned to him. "Promise me we'll raise Wesley differently. Promise me we'll teach him that love means accountability, that protecting someone sometimes means letting them face consequences." "I promise." Cole pulled her close. "We'll raise him to be nothing like Raymond Ashford. We'll raise him to be kind, strong, good." Ashford died before dawn. Lila woke to Morrison's quiet announcement, felt relief wash through her like rain. "It's over," she whispered. "It's over," Cole confirmed. They buried Ashford in the canyon where he fell. No marker, no ceremony, just earth and stone and the wind singing through the rocks. Morrison took statements from everyone, documenting the chase and the shooting. With Victoria's evidence added to the existing case, the prosecution declared itself satisfied. Ashford's crimes were documented, his victims acknowledged. Justice, long delayed, had finally come. The ride home took 2 days. Lila spent most of it sleeping against Cole's shoulder, exhaustion finally catching up. When they crested the ridge and saw the ranch spread below, she felt tears of relief. "Home," she said. "Home," Cole agreed. Margaret met them at the door, Wesley in her arms. The baby had grown in the few days Lila was gone, his eyes brighter, his grip stronger. "He missed you," Margaret said, smiling. "Fussed every time I put him down." Lila took Wesley, breathing in his baby smell. "I missed him too." That night, the ranch hands threw together a celebration. Someone produced a fiddle. Jack played surprisingly well, filling the evening with music. They danced in the yard under the stars, laughter and joy spilling out after weeks of fear. Cole pulled Lila into a dance, his arms sure around her. "Still want to marry me? After all this?" "Especially after all this." She looked up at him. "You've seen me at my worst, scared, angry, desperate, and you stood beside me anyway." "Same to you." His smile was tender. "So when?" "Soon. Before winter comes." Lila rested her head against his chest. "I want Wesley there. Want him to see us make our promises." "He won't remember." "No. But we'll tell him about it someday. About how his family was built from choice and courage." They were married 3 weeks later in a ceremony held at the ranch. The circuit preacher officiated, the same one who'd been caught in the blizzard months ago. Half the county came, ranchers who'd stood by them, townspeople who'd testified, even Victoria Ashford, frail and grieving but determined to see Wesley one last time. "Thank you for saving him," she whispered to Lila, holding the baby, "for giving him the life my son could never provide." "Thank you for helping us stop him," Lila replied. "It took courage." Victoria's smile was sad. "Too little, too late, but perhaps it's something." Lila wore a simple cream dress that Eleanor Morrison had helped her make. Cole wore his Sunday best, his hair combed, his boots polished. Wesley, dressed in a christening gown Victoria had sent, slept through the entire ceremony in Margaret's arms. When the preacher asked if they took each other, their answers rang clear. "I do. I do." The kiss was gentle, full of promise. Around them, people cheered. Ben fired his pistol in the air. Jack's fiddle struck up a celebratory tune. The celebration lasted into the night. Food, music, dancing. Lila moved through it in a daze of happiness, Wesley in her arms, Cole's hand always finding hers. As the evening wound down and guests began to depart, Victoria approached one last time. She pressed an envelope into Lila's hand. "For Wesley. When he's older." Her eyes were wet. Letters from his mother. Things she wrote before Raymond took her. "I want him to know who she really was." "I'll make sure he gets them," Lila promised. "And I'll tell him about you too. About the grandmother who finally found her courage." Victoria touched Wesley's cheek gently, then turned away. Lila watched her leave, a small figure in black, bearing the weight of a lifetime's guilt. "Sad story," Cole said, coming to stand beside her. "But not our story." Lila looked up at her husband. The words still felt new and wonderful. "Our story gets a happy ending." The last guest left near midnight. The ranch hands returned to the bunkhouse, Margaret to her room. Finally, Lila and Cole were alone with Wesley. They put him to bed together in the cradle Cole had made. The baby's eyes were already closing, his thumb finding his mouth. "Sleep, little one," Lila whispered. "Dream of good things. You're safe now. You're loved. You're home." On the porch, the night was clear and cold, autumn giving way to the first hints of winter. Stars blazed overhead, countless and eternal. Cole wrapped his arms around Lila from behind, his chin resting on her head. "Happy, Mrs. Mercer?" She leaned back against him, feeling his heartbeat steady against her spine. "More than I ever thought possible." "Good, because this is just the beginning." "The beginning of what?" "Of everything." His voice was warm with promise. "Of raising Wesley. Of building this ranch. Of growing old together and annoying each other." Lila laughed. "Annoying each other? You're stubborn." "I'm stubborn. It's inevitable." He turned her to face him. "But I wouldn't have it any other way." She kissed him, long and sweet. When they pulled apart, both were smiling. "Come on," Cole said. "Let's go to bed. Tomorrow we start our real life together." "I thought today was our real life." "Today was the wedding. Tomorrow is the marriage." He led her inside, closing the door on the night. "Tomorrow is when we wake up and choose each other all over again. And the day after that. And the day after that. For the rest of our lives," Lila agreed. In his cradle, Wesley slept peacefully. Dreams of milk and warmth and safety. Dreams of a mother who'd loved him enough to die for him. Dreams of a future bright with possibility. And in the main bedroom, two people who'd been broken by loss and made whole by love held each other close. They'd been brought together by circumstance, by necessity, by the cruel calculation of others. But they stayed together by choice, by courage, by faith, by love. Outside, the mountains stood eternal. The creek sang its ancient song, and the stars wheeled overhead, indifferent and beautiful, watching over a small ranch in Wyoming where 3 damaged souls had found each other and built a family from the wreckage. It wasn't the life any of them had planned. It wasn't the life they'd expected. It was better because they'd chosen it, fought for it, built it with their own hands and hearts, and in the end, choice was everything. Lila fell asleep with Cole's arms around her, and Wesley's soft breathing audible through the open door. Her last thought before dreams took her was simple and profound. She was home. She was loved. She was enough. And tomorrow, she would wake up and choose it all again. The story of the barren widow and the broken rancher was over. The story of the Mercer family, built on second chances, fierce love, and unshakable courage, had just begun.